This is an AR-15 that's chambered in 5.56 and 223 Remington. This is a Ruger 10-22 that shoots 22 long rifle. This is a Mossberg 22 tactical that shoots 22 long rifle. This here is an M1 Garand that shoots 30-06. Now, why am I telling you all of this? Well, let me start off by saying this. For years now, I've heard many misconceptions and outright lies about the AR-15 platform that just simply are not true. I've heard it called an assault rifle, an assault weapon, a weapon of mass murder, and a weapon of war, which all are simply not true. Any weapon can be a weapon of war, and any weapon can be an assault weapon. Now that we've gotten that clear, this is not a weapon of war. There's nothing special about this, and I'm going to explain to you why. Now you're looking at the Ruger 10-22. It doesn't look black and scary. It doesn't look like a mass murder weapon either. And it shoots 22 long rifle. You know, most people probably see this and say, oh, that doesn't look like it doesn't look tactical. It doesn't look deadly. It doesn't look dangerous. But I'm here to tell you, this is just as dangerous as an AR-15. Now, why is that? Let me show you. This right here is the bullet, or the round, that the AR-15 shoots, 5.56 by 45, or also known as 223 Remington. This right here is 22 long rifle. The Ruger 10-22, the gun I just showed you, shoots this. The AR-15 shoots this. Now they look very different. This is a very tiny round. This looks a lot bigger. However, whether you believe it or not, in diameter, these are pretty much the same. But that's about it. Not length or velocity or a number of other things, but they're very similar in their diameter. Sure, their ballistics are totally different from each other, but this will still kill you just as easily as this. Remember that M1 Garand I showed you earlier? This one right here? The M1 Garand was used by the U.S. Army and the U.S. Marine Corps in World War II. It's a semi-automatic weapon just like the AR-15. Semi-automatic meaning every time you pull the trigger, it shoots a bullet. You have to pull down the trigger every time for a bullet to go off. Let off the trigger, pull it again for another round to go off. That's the way it works. Neither of these weapons are fully automatic. Now, let me show you something about the M1 Garand. Again, this is 5.56 that's shot out of an AR-15. This is 30-06 that's shot out of an M1 Garand. Big difference. They are worlds apart, night and day. Now, why do I tell you this? Well, if you look at the M1 Garand, it doesn't look very menacing at all. It's not black and scary, and it doesn't look like a mass murder weapon or even an assault rifle. Now, does it? However, obviously, there's a big difference in the bullets it shoot. There's a massive difference between those two rounds. So my point is that many people are misinformed about this weapon. There's nothing special about it or anything that makes it more deadly than anything else. Arguably, any semi-automatic gun is just as deadly or dangerous as this gun right here. There's nothing special about it. Your fears come from misinformation and ignorance. That being said, that's not an insult. Some people are going to argue that the pistol grip, the adjustable and collapsible stock, and the handguard, and along with the sight, makes it more dangerous, more deadly, makes you more effective with it. It might be true that it makes you more effective. However, it's all about training. You can be just as effective with any other semi-automatic rifle out there as you can with an AR-15. This is not any more deadlier than the M1 Garand I showed you. This is not any more deadlier than that Ruger 10-22 I showed you. There's many different AR-15s out there that shoot different rounds. There's some AR-15s out there that shoot 308, which is similar to 30-06. The AR-15 is a very configurable and customizable platform. A lot of other guns are that way as well, but the AR-15 is arguably the most customizable platform for rifles. You have latched on to this rifle because it is a very popular rifle here in the United States. It's basically an M4 and M16 for civilians. The only difference being, it doesn't have a select fire option for fully automatic fire or burst fire. And to get those features on an AR-15, you have to pay a ridiculous tax stamp on them. I don't know much of how you're supposed to acquire a fully automatic weapon. All I know is that it costs an arm and a leg, and almost no one can afford it. In all the mass shootings in United States history, none of them were committed with a fully automatic weapon. This is not a fully automatic weapon. This is a semi-automatic weapon, meaning every time I pull the trigger, a round is fired. Then I have to let off the trigger and then pull the trigger again for another bullet to go out the barrel. Fully automatic fire is where you just pull down on the trigger and it keeps firing. Does that make sense? Don't worry, my muzzle is not in any unsafe direction. Obviously, it's not chambered. I checked it before I did that. Don't freak out on me. But besides that, so I want to go over some comments I'm finding on the internet. And obviously, there are products, and directly because of the shooting that happened in Florida at that school on Valentine's Day, I'm so sorry to the families that have lost loved ones. It was a terrible tragedy, and my thoughts and prayers go out to those families. But I am finding comments on Facebook specifically with a lot of misinformed people and people that are just acting like total jackasses and dumbasses. To be totally blunt, that's what the case is. And I kind of want to go over some of those comments I'm finding. Now, I took one for the team and went on Occupy Democrats' Facebook page. I know, it's low-hanging fruit. Also went on a couple other Facebook pages. Now, please note that not all these comments are from Occupy Democrats, and I know it's low-hanging fruit, but anyway, this is what people actually think, and I kind of want to make a rebuttal to these comments. I'm going to blur out the faces and the names. So let's go ahead and start with this comment. Bullshit. If gun control laws wouldn't have prevented this, sign a bill into law that mandates a total ban on the sale of all types of assault weapons, and confiscate and destroy all existing assault-type weapons. Drastic times call for drastic measures. So again, you're hearing them say assault weapons, assault-type weapons. Well, the reality is any weapon, whether it be a knife, a pencil, an AR-15, anything, can be considered an assault weapon, depending on what you're using it for. So the term assault weapon and assault-type weapons is not a real term. AR-15 is not an assault weapon if you're not using it for that, okay? So forget about that. It's not an assault-type weapon. It's not an assault rifle. AR-15 is not even an assault rifle. To be classified as an assault rifle, it has to have a fully automatic function as well. Confiscate and destroy all existing assault-type weapons. So a lot of people want, I guess, law enforcement and U.S. military to go door to door and confiscate weapons. I don't think that's going to go too well. A lot of law enforcement officers are supporters of the Second Amendment, and so is our military. I'd say the majority of law enforcement in our military are supporters of the Second Amendment and wouldn't be able to do that. So I don't know what kind of world they're living in, but they actually think this. They also finish off by saying drastic times call for drastic measures. Now look, obviously there's been a lot more mass shootings and just overall terrible things happening in recent history. By recent history, I mean within the last 20 years. And that's caused to a whole different issue besides guns, okay? And I'll explain why in another video as to why that is. It has a lot to do with the degeneracy in America and the breakdown of the American family, and I will go over that in a different video. But besides that, let's move on to the next comment. Okay, so next comment. Still shouldn't allow the public to have access to assault rifles and other military weapons because the guns he grew up around were definitely not automatic. I'm going to ignore the rest of that comment under it because it doesn't pertain to what I'm talking about. It pertains to the post itself. But besides that, let me go and address what I read to you. Assault rifles and military weapons. Okay, let me explain this. Even back in the early days of our country, muzzle loaders, muskets, were owned by civilians, and that was the standard issue for infantry for our military then. Then you get into the late 1800s and the early 1900s and even up to the 1940s. Bolt-action rifles were the standard issue for infantrymen. And guess what? Civilians own those as well. So this is nothing new. AR-15s are not something brand new that civilians are able to buy. We have always been able to own military-grade weapons and what the military currently has. Also, again, he mentions assault rifles. Again, AR-15 is not an assault rifle. To have an assault rifle here in America, you have to go through a bunch of tax stamps, get the government to approve you, a bunch of headache. It's a big headache, and you have to have a lot of money, and most people are not going to go through with doing that. So again, the AR-15 is not an assault rifle. All right, so the next comment. What the hell? No one needs a fucking AR-15 rifle. That be their opinion. I don't think they know how an AR-15 operates or what an AR-15 even is. These are the type of people that'll listen to the news media, whether it be Fox News, CNN, anything on television, or even online, and listens to what they tell them. Oh, it has laser-guided bullets, and also that embarrassing video of CNN trying to explain how a bump fire stock works.
A semi-automatic rifle to fire rapidly, just like a fully automatic weapon. The bump stock is attached to the receiver of the rifle, replacing the standard stock that fits against the shooter's shoulder. The stock then uses that recoil effect to bounce the rifle off the shoulder and essentially bump, that's where the term comes from, the trigger, back into the trigger finger, thereby allowing the shooter to fire the weapon repeatedly without having to release the trigger.
Media is constantly getting stuff wrong about firearms, and that goes for Fox News too, CNN, any news media outlet, and people believe this. I think that they don't know what an AR-15 actually is, and that there's nothing really special about it that makes it any more dangerous than any other gun. Also, on one or two of these comments, this was on there as well, and I find that pretty funny and pretty fucking convenient. Alright, so besides all that, I'd like to end on this post right here. This was on the other 98%, whatever, their Facebook page or whatever. And it says, if you feel like you need an AR-15, you are not mentally fit to own an AR-15. You can't make this shit up.